I'm live. All right. Hello. This is Broxdale. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, whatever time of day it is for you. I've got a cup of coffee here, and I want to talk about Helena a little bit. I've uh, I've been playing Prot Warrior in World of Warcraft for over a decade, and I have a lot of experience with Mythic Plus. Right now, I've got about 200 hours in um, in Fellowship, almost all of it exclusively on Helena. Um, I am currently ranked in the top 100 Helena, and um, yeah, I feel like I know what I'm talking about at this point, and I'd like to do a little bit of deep dive into each of the different aspects of Helena over the next week, um, and really discuss some of the finer details of like the talents and the gems and why people are taking certain things at the high end, um, and why you should or shouldn't be doing that. There's a lot of misinformation. It's very easy to watch someone on Twitch doing a plus 40 and think, oh, I'm running a champion 4. This guy obviously knows what he's doing. I'm going to copy what he's doing. And then a lot of times that might be the right thing to do, but also in just as many times, I firmly believe that that is the wrong maneuver. That's the wrong take. A lot of times at the very high end, the people pushing the content higher than I'm pushing, they don't need to be watching my video. But what they're doing is solving problems on a case-by-case basis to... they're finding solutions to problems on a case-by-case basis at the very high end. One of the cool things about Fellowship is that because the affix changes at each of the levels and everything's so well balanced at the moment, that there isn't much trickle down. Just because someone's running something at the very high end doesn't mean it's the best thing to run in a Champion 6 or a Paragon 4 or an Adept 2, or even an Eternal 20. The problems you face as a tank change. For example, when I was progressing through Adept and Champion, just living was really hard. And at the time, the people that were already pushing Eternal, which was crazy because I was Eternal like day 2, but the people that were above me, they were running damage talents. And it didn't really make sense because I was having trouble living. The reason they were running damage talents is they were, 50 item levels higher, and their healer was far more geared, and they didn't need to be running the defensive talents. And then eventually they caught up to the content that their gear was made for, and they started running defensive talents again. And so it can be deceptive just taking a one look at, oh, this is what this screenshot, these are the talents I should be running, and never looking back. It's important to understand that right now the game is so well balanced, and there are reasons to take every single talent. And so I want to talk about the talents real quick, and then maybe later I'll talk about gems, talk about legendaries, talk about rotation, that kind of thing. But right now we're just going to talk about talents. I've got the talents pulled up. This is kind of where I've landed in the content I'm doing right now. I'm pushing 34s. I plan on pushing some 35s, 36s tonight. I've got a really good healer and some excellent DPS friends that absolutely truck. And so as long as I can pull, if I can live a big enough pull, they're going to be able to kill it. And so a lot of what I've built my kind of build around is trying to do 8-9 packs at a time on a plus 35, which is very challenging. And the solutions I've come up with for facing that might be different than trying to live a triple pack on Adept 6. But I want to walk through each of the talents right now, including the ones I haven't taken. The best defense, this one at the top left, I think most Helena players kind of agree is the least balanced of all the talents in the tree. Of all 18 talents, this is the one that's taken the least. It has a good use case, and the good use case is if you are running a low haste build and the Razor necklace, and you've got a lot of free globals that you're using on Measured Strike, then this is essentially free damage, free shield throws, and free damage mitigation through the next legendary. It increases your uptime by about 20% on the damage reduction part of the shield legendary, or the neck legendary for shield throw. The negatives to this, the reason most people don't run it, is the procs per minute's kind of low. Shield throw is not a button that's super great to press unless you're running the neck legendary, which I do. I love the neck legendary. I'm a big neck Lego fan. But if you're already running the neck legendary, you would think that this would be great. It just increases the uptime on the debuff. The problem is the procs per minute are kind of wonky. You're not quite sure when it's going to happen. It happens more often when you're doing big pulls, and in really big pulls, it's when the neck legendary is the least helpful because it's only hitting 7 of the targets, even if you're pulling 30. And ultimately, it's on the GCD. And so it coming off the GCD doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the next thing you press. There are a lot of other buttons that are still, even if you're running the neck Lego, still better. It's still worth pressing first. And if you're going to press 3 buttons before it anyway, then it would have come off cooldown, and you're not going to make use of the proc. But that's this one. It has a use case, but it's a very, very small use case that most people don't have. Shield Mastery is going to be one that as you progress, you're going to be turning on and off. This is your main button to help you with toughness and shields up. If you find that you're doing content where your toughness is getting just depleted so fast, if you're under-geared for the content you're doing, or because of how awesome your DPS are and how awesome your healer is, they are wanting you to pull bigger than your armor really allows you to do easily, and you're burning through your toughness, like you pop shields up, you at full toughness, and then like 3 globals later, you're back down at 0, and that's happening all the time. You're going to want to take this. This allows that to be a little bit sturdier. It moves the bar slower, and it gives you more uptime on your shields up. For me, the signal for taking it and not taking it was all around Iron Wall. If I was not using Iron Wall, if I was progressing through Paragon and I realized, like, for 3 dungeons in a row, hey guys, I'm not pressing this button a whole lot. I'm just kind of maintaining the toughness without needing it. The moment you say that out loud, you want to drop Shield Master. Because then you're not making use of it. If Iron Wall is sitting there unused, then you could use those 2 talent points somewhere else and then use Iron Wall to make up the difference and then become stronger. And then the moment you are at the point where, oh my god, even with Iron Wall, I can't keep toughness back up, then you go back to turning it on. So it's going to be one that you tinker back and forth with as you progress and as your gear kind of settles into where you're comfortable tanking. It's going to be one that you toggle on and off as you progress, no matter what. Sword and Board. Sword and Board is really powerful at the low end. So like Contender, Champion, Contender, Adept, going into Champion, it's very powerful. It helps your healers. Your healers don't have a lot of tools at the low end, and it just gives you an absorb. It gives you a proc per minute. It's essentially, think about it as once a minute, or essentially once a pull, you're going to get like a 30% health shield. This is even better if you're running the Cloak Legendary. The main reason you'd be running the Cloak Legendary is it's the only Legendary you have at the moment. They're all pretty close together, but you run Sword and Board in parallel with the Cloak Legendary that gives you more procs of the Empowered Shield Slam. This is one that you want to use if you're having trouble living in the early levels. There's a moment when you make a decision, like working your way through Paragon and Champion, or Champion and Paragon, where you switch this for something else, and we'll get into that in a bit. And then once you kind of make that switch, you never look back. All right, let's go into the second row. This is going to be a long video, I can already tell. Reinforced Steel. This talent is one of the most powerful talents in the game for 1 point. It is absolutely useless before Champion, and maybe even really before Paragon. In your first like 20 hours of gameplay as Helena, this talent point will be mitigating like 1% of damage. I'm not kidding. It's that low. And if you're ever doing a dungeon and you lived because you had 1% more damage mitigation in your first 20 hours, that is absolutely remarkable, right? That would mean that you finished a pull with 0.5% health. And I would just put this talent somewhere else or this talent point somewhere else at the beginning. Punishing Strikes is just like a 5% damage increase, like no matter what. If you have an even number of talent points, the best defense would be better. The sword and board would be better. Pretty much everything's better than this talent. However, once you're in Champion, pushing into Paragon, and then especially when you're in Eternal, you have so much armor and you have so much gear that this button or this one talent is the equivalent of like a 10-15% damage reduction, which is insane. It's like a five dungeon levels difference. So once you get into Champion and Paragon, you take this and you never look back. Guarded Veteran. A lot of people were kind of wishy-washy on how good this was. I've been a believer in it the whole time. Blocking is really powerful. This is the first pull of a Wraithtide 31 I did yesterday. Your goal as a tank is to take this top line and try and keep this line as steady as possible at the bottom, right? So as you can see, like I'm taking 560,000 damage per second, but after mitigation, I'm only taking 90,000 damage per second. That's the goal as the tank. Blocking in this pull, I blocked 11 million damage in this pull. This is a I think a sextuple pull. I think there's 6 packs in this, and there's a lot of damage going out. And that Guarded Veteran, 10% increased block chance. That would make I have a 70% block chance, 60. So it's like 25% of these blocked hits. So about 2.5 million mitigated damage is just the Guarded Veteran talent. So that pull alone is the same as putting a 2.5 million absorb shield on me. That's worth taking. Once you take it, you never look back. Don't think about it anymore. It's just that powerful. And it's more powerful the more overgeared you are too. So if you're highly geared and doing lower level content, it's going to be even more powerful because the way blocking works and it prioritizes static damage reduction. Editor Billy chiming in here. After pulling out the calculator and not doing napkin math, the number is closer to 1.6 million damage from that talent, not 2.5. So just wanted to put a... all right. So Punishing Strikes. This is a straightforward, simple one. It's essentially a 5% damage increase. Just across the board. If you take it over the course of a dungeon, you'll do 5% more damage. If you have a free point to put around and you're not worried about living something or needing that point somewhere else, it's a great option. All right, third row, Aftershock. Aftershock is something you run when you're running the Boots Legendary. The Boots Legendary increases the amount of shockwaves you do in a dungeon substantially. It's going to give you essentially an extra 3 shockwaves a minute. And so, and then you've got your base shockwave that you're casting roughly every 15 seconds with high haste and CDR. And so you're doing like 8 shockwaves a minute. And so it's a 30% damage increase for essentially a 60% uptime. It's very powerful. if you're running the boots and you want to do damage, this is where you go. Sharpened Blade. At the very beginning, people weren't taking this because Sweeping Blade or Sweeping Strike was an ability you didn't really want to press a whole lot because people were having trouble living. It didn't have any damage mitigation. All it did was damage. And so it was a low priority. That since has changed with some balancing. Sweeping Strike now provides a 10% DR for everyone in your party while it's active, and you can maintain about a 50% uptime on this ability. And so it's a huge, huge damage reduction. So you're prioritizing Sharpening Blade over a lot of stuff. As long as your shield's up is active and your toughness is high, like Sharpened Blade, you're prioritizing pressing this button. So if we pull up that same this same thing, assuming 50% uptime on this pull, which is a minute long, and I was able to cast it 2.5 times, and so yeah, 50% uptime. You can imagine, so this would have been 32, an extra 64 casts would have gotten off at an average hit of 60,000. 60,000 times 64. So yeah, this is another talent that mitigated 3.8 million damage in that pull. High again, closer to 2 million, the equivalent of 5 of my health bars. So still a massive, massive number, but I forgot to multiply out the uptime of 0.5 or 50%. Closer to 2 million. Once you have access to this talent, you're really never going to run Sword and Board again. In that same amount of time, this would have mitigated 60,000 damage, and Sharpened Blade mitigated 3.8 million by just reducing the auto attacks by 20%, 50% of the time. So for the first half of the pull, they just attacked less, and 60 less attacks on me is that powerful. So Sharpened Blade's goated. It's so good. I'm going to talk about these two as a pair. Razor Shrapnel and Skullcracker you're going to almost always take together. And you're pretty much only ever going to take them when you're running the Legendary Neck. And this is what you run if you want to do more damage. If you're running content that you don't need to live a lot, so let's say I wanted to drop Magic Ward and Shield Mastery because I'm not worried about my shields up or toughness, and I wanted to do more damage, these two massively increase your damage. Paired together, it's about 15-20% damage increase. And so along with Punishing Strikes, you're doing a lot of extra damage. Magic Ward is a single point damage reduction. If you have a free point and you want to take less damage, you take it and you just don't think about it that much. You can get really nitty gritty at the very high end. There are some dungeons that do less magic damage. There's some magic damage that's just generally less deadly because of the way you're doing pulls. And there's a chance that after you do a run, you're like, hey, I would love to do 5% more damage. Is this 10% damage reduction, magic damage reduction, really saving me at all? Is it making my healer's job easier? And if it's not, then you can move this over to Punishing Strikes or Skullcracker or Greater Shockwave to switch that to damage. But in general, I think Magic Ward is a safe place to keep that point. High Command is one of the 3 talents that I suggest once you unlock it, you take it, and you never look back, and you never take it off for any reason, no matter what content you're doing, no matter what build you're running, no matter what legendary you're running, no matter what other talents you're running. It increases your shields up uptime, and increases your hold the line uptime. Hold the line gives you a lot of like healing. It's essentially the same amount. It actually does more healing on a long run than my Serals did. So like, if I look here, almost as much. So, yeah, it is. So these 3 times in this pull, it's really helpful. If I look at all bosses and trash, it's just maintaining 4k HPS throughout the dungeon. It's very helpful. That 4k HPS is healing that the healer isn't having to put on you. And when they are already tapped out of resources trying to survive, and pulling off 50k HPS, asking them to do another 4 on you is hard. And this is a really easy talent point to just put in and not worry about. Gleaming Shield changes the way you play the game. You take this is another one of the 3 that once you unlock it, you take it and you never look back. It massively increases your chance to block. It increases the healing you get. Once you have this and high haste, you essentially have 85 to 90% uptime on shields up, and not just toughness. I'm talking about something else. I'm talking about the actual buff from shields up. This yellow line going around, this buff right here. Toughness is one thing, but you also want to maintain this yellow line. While you're doing that, you're blocking more damage. Those blocked hits, I mean, you saw earlier, 11 million damage reduced by blocking in just one pull. And it's essentially doubling your chance to block. It's responsible for 5 million damage mitigation in that one pull. You take this, you never look back. Second Wind is a great talent. A lot of people take it. I typically take this when I don't know what else to take. So if I'm doing content or if I'm progressing upwards and I don't need shield mastery because my toughness is fine and I don't really want to run magic ward and I have 3 points to spend and I don't want to do more damage. I haven't yet unlocked my a legendary or anything like that, and I don't have these other talents that I want to spend on the legendary. This is a good damage increase and a good survivability increase. You have a very high uptime. It's like 60% on a 30% strength gain. You have high uptime on it. It's just stats. You don't have to really think about it. It's a good talent. Martial Command, I'd say, is the second worst talent across all of them. This is another one that you're going to see people taking very, very, very rarely. I'll give you 2 instances, though, that you would take it. We are trying to progress through Sith rolls right now. I think it's like a Sith rolls 30... Sith rolls 33. Okay? This dungeon, the last boss, is insanely difficult. He does so much damage every 30 seconds to the whole party that we have to essentially redesign our team to be able to survive just those hits. We can do the rest of the dungeon no problem, but during that pull at the end, there's so much damage going out that I have to run Grand Melee, and then we have to use healer cooldowns, and then I use my Sanctuary, and then we rotate through all 4 party members, pressing their Sanctuary, and then we do healer CDs again, and then by that time I have Grand Melee again, and I press Grand Melee again, and then after 8-9 rounds of this, the boss is enraged and doing massive damage, and everyone's gone with their personals, and we have to find a way to live another 20 seconds. We are considering, okay, we're going to try again without it, but we're considering me running Martial Command. It'll let me use my my ultimate ability to essentially give everyone a very, very, very big not absorb shield, but damage reduction. The equivalent of, I think, 35%. So, and it would be for long enough. We might be able to squeeze, if I time it really well, might be able to squeeze 2. It might be able to reduce the damage of 2 of the effects. The other use case for this is you're playing with your friend, and your friend is a healer, and they're not very good, or they're very undergeared, and you want to help them out. Okay, something you can do to help them out is to take that, and then on the big pull that you know you're going to have your ultimate for, that you know they're going to struggle with healing, you can help them out by just reducing the amount of healing they have to do, because everyone's taking way, way less damage. And if you know that going in, and you know that they're going to have trouble healing it, that's where you spend those points. If you don't think you're going to have to worry about yourself surviving, it's really just more of the team surviving, then you can drop Magic Ward and Shield Mastery and then pick this up. That's the big one there. Frontline Defender. This is one of the select it and forget it. It makes you stronger. I don't need to dive too far into it. It makes your toughness better in how much it can have and how fast you generate it. It just makes you better at the game. You take this, you never look back. I'm going to skip over Mastery of War for a second. Greater Shockwave. If you're running boots and you're doing a lot of shockwaves and you want to do more damage, take it. It's even with the boots, it's only about as much damage as Punishing Strikes is. And with the neck, it's less damage than Skullcracker or Razor Shrapnel. It's less damage than Aftershock. It's actually like one of the lower damage options. But if you're already running all these other things and you want to run full damage, run it. It's a fun one. Just make sure your buttons do more damage. Your Shockwave do more damage. Master of War. This is a finicky one. I have it selected right now because the last dungeon I did, I needed it. But it's one that I move around a lot. By default, you should not have this selected. You only should turn this talent on if you do a dungeon and you like your route and you think to yourself afterwards, man, I used my Grand Melee on this pack and I wanted to, and then 2 packs later, it would have been really cool if I had it again. But it was still on cooldown for 15 seconds, right? When you tell yourself that, that's when you take this, right? Because that means the next time you run that dungeon, if you want to run it back right then, and it's like, oh, I'm going to have Grand Melee for this 3rd pull, then it's super helpful. If that precise scenario hasn't occurred, it is a waste of a talent point. If you're just running around with 20% reduced melee and it's sitting there unused, or you're just spamming it on cooldown for no reason, then it's just not a good use of a talent point. You can be stronger by putting it in Punishing Strikes. You can be stronger by putting it in Skullcracker, Greater Shockwave. You can be stronger by dropping Magic Ward and dropping Master of War and picking up a 2-point talent. There's a lot of maneuvering you can do. But if you're playing this dungeon and you're like, oh, this first pull is going to be huge, I'm going to need Grand Melee to collect everybody. Very reasonable. Most dungeons for Helena start with a massive first pull with Grand Melee. And then you need it soon after, and this would make the difference. It's worth picking up. A lot of times that's solvable in a different way, right? Moving which packs you're doing in which order. But sometimes the faster way to do the dungeon, to shave 30 seconds off, is to pick up this talent. And when you know that that's the answer to the question, then that's when you take it. That's all the talents. We've been talking now for 30 minutes. I was going to dive into some legendaries and some gems, some routing, some rotation stuff. But I think for now, we're going to call it there, and we're just going to focus on the talents for this video. Absolutely. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. You can reach out to me on Discord too, Brochdale on Discord. I'd love to answer your questions and theory craft with you. If you have a talent that I didn't give enough pros to that you really like, let me know. I've only been playing this game 200 hours. This game's only been out a month. I definitely don't know everything, and I don't think anyone does. That's one of the things I like about this game so much, is just how much experimenting is going on right now. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for other content. Thank you very much.